At Thanksgiving, my sister discovered I had $12 million and my family demanded I give it to her. Hey everyone, before we dive into today's story, I need your help. We've noticed our channel's momentum slowing down, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's super quick, totally free, and truly allows us to keep bringing you great content. Your support means the world, so let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks a ton, and now let's get into it. I'm using a throwaway account for obvious reasons, with a few details changed to keep things anonymous. So, I'm Sarah, 38, female, and I just need to get this off my chest. You know those family dynamics where one kid can do no wrong, and the other just seems invisible? Yeah, welcome to my life. Everything was pretty normal until I was 8. I was an only child, and while my parents weren't overly affectionate, they were present. Mom would help with homework, and Dad would occasionally take me fishing on Lake St. Clair. We weren't the Brady Bunch, but we were fine. Then came the night that changed everything. I remember my Aunt Kelly showing up at 2 a.m., telling me to pack a suitcase because Mom was in the hospital. My sister Rachel was on her way, but something was wrong. She wasn't due for another 2 months. The next few weeks were a blur of hospital visits and hushed conversations. Rachel was tiny, like one of my baby dolls, but she was covered in tubes and wires. I wasn't allowed to touch her or get too close. That's when I first felt it, an invisible wall forming between me and the rest of my family. When Rachel finally came home, our house became a sterilized bubble. Mom became obsessed with germs. I'm talking industrial-strength disinfectant everywhere. Hand sanitizer stations in every room and constant cleaning. The harsh smell of bleach still bothers me to this day. But here's what really messed me up. Anytime I showed the slightest symptom of illness, I was sent off to Grandma Marie's or Aunt Kelly's house. I mean, every single time. Sneeze once. Pack your bags. A mild cough. You're off to Grandma's? First I thought it was fun. Grandma Marie would make cookies, and Aunt Kelly had an amazing collection of Nancy Drew books I was devouring. But kids aren't dumb. After a while, you start to figure out what's really going on. You're not being sent on adventures. You're being treated like a threat, as if your very existence could harm your beloved sister. I tried everything to get their attention in a healthier way. Honestly, everything. I got straight A's, and Mom would barely look up from Rachel's latest doctor's appointment calendar. I won first prize at the science fair with a renewable energy project. And Dad just asked if I could store the display board in the garage because Rachel was allergic to cardboard dust. Is that even a thing? The real kicker came when I was 12. For months, I'd been practicing for the school talent show.
Teaching myself to play Bridge Over Troubled Water on the piano. I know, a bit on the nose.
The night of the show, Rachel had a 99.1 degree Fahrenheit fever. Guess who had no one in the audience? Meanwhile, 2 weeks later, the entire family, including both sets of grandparents, showed up for Rachel's 15-minute flute recital where she basically butchered hot cross buns. Rachel quickly learned to work the system. By age 7, she was past any real health issues, but that didn't stop her from performing. Headache? Must stay home from school. Feeling tired? Someone else should do her chores. Worried about a test? Mom would literally call the school to get the deadline extended. I started spending more and more time in my room, lost in books about art history and antiques. It's funny how life works out sometimes. My room became my sanctuary, mostly because Rachel claimed she was allergic to my lavender air freshener. So it was the only place she wouldn't go. Do you know what's really messed up? When she faked being sick, a part of me felt grateful. At least then I'd be taken to Grandma Marie's, where someone would ask about my day or be interested in what I was up to. Grandma was actually the one who sparked my interest in vintage jewelry. She had an incredible collection of costume pieces that she let me organize and catalog. I guess I should have seen it as prophetic. The worst part wasn't even the obvious favoritism. It was how they rewrote history to justify their actions. Rachel just needs more attention because she had such a rough start. Sarah's always been so independent. Sarah understands that her sister has special needs. No, I didn't understand. I was a child who couldn't comprehend why having a good immune system made me less deserving of love. Looking back, I can see how those years shaped me. The constant message that I was somehow unsafe or inconvenient to be around doesn't just disappear. But hey, at least it taught me to be self-sufficient. When no one checks your homework or cares about your triumphs, you quickly learn to be your own cheerleader. The road to Independence High School. Most people either loved it or hated it. Me, I saw it as a ticket out. While Rachel was building her drama empire in middle school, I was laying the groundwork for my escape. And let me tell you, nothing inspires you to achieve more than knowing no one else will do it for you. Remember how I spent hours sorting Grandma Marie's jewelry collection? That taught me a valuable lesson, the importance of systematic organization and attention to detail. In high school, I approached everything with the same mindset. My desk at home looked like something out of an organization magazine, color-coded. Notes, meticulously planned study schedules, everything in its place. Rachel used to tease me about it, calling me Rainman. Cute, sis. But here's the thing about being invisible. No one's watching your failures or successes, so you can do whatever the heck you want. I joined every club that wouldn't interfere. With my part-time job at Carson's Diner, shout out to Carol, the owner, for remembering my birthday when my own parents forgot. Debate team? Check. National Honor Society president? Check. Editor-in-chief of the school newspaper? Check. The debate team was where I truly found my voice. There's something so satisfying about dismantling someone's argument while staying completely composed. It also taught me how to negotiate, which I didn't realize at the time, but would be useful later. I won states twice. Rachel had major soccer games, so my parents couldn't make it to either competition. She was on the C team and didn't even play. Cheers, junior year was when things really got interesting. I took the SUT and got a flawless score. Not, oh, pretty good. I mean perfect. Perfect 1600. You know how many people get that? Less than 1%. I remember staring at the results screen for almost 20 minutes, convinced it was a mistake. I rushed home to tell my parents, realizing this was a dumb idea. Mom was in the kitchen, helping Rachel with her English homework. The conversation went something like this. Me. Mom, look. I got a perfect SUT score. Mom. That's nice, honey, but can you keep it down? Rachel's trying to concentrate. She has a big test tomorrow. Rachel scoffs. Yeah, some of us actually have to study, Miss Perfect. Mom. Rachel, sweetie, don't stress. You're just a different kind of learner. I still have the hard copy of those SUT results somewhere. Never got pinned on the fridge, but Rachel's C+ in English? That infant received prime refrigerator real estate, complete with a "we're so proud of you" magnet, college, and the start of something new, college applications. That whole process was interesting. I applied to 15 schools without telling anyone. I wrote all my own essays, collected my own recommendations, and handled all the financial aid paperwork myself. My guidance counselor, Mr. Chun, was the real MVP. My parents were too busy to help me with the FAFSA, so I stayed late after school. Then the acceptances started rolling in. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Michigan. And each one came with a scholarship offer. I kept them all in a locked box under my bed, knowing what would happen if Rachel found them. They'd suddenly shift there. Focus entirely to her. But if Sarah goes to Harvard, I'll be all alone. Or some nonsense like that. The day I got my full ride offer from Yale, Rachel joined JV cheerleading. Guess which one was celebrated with a family dinner? Hint. I had microwave mac and cheese in my room while they went to Olive Garden. But you know what? That scholarship was my golden ticket. Tuition, room, and board, all covered, plus a book allowance. I could finally leave that house where I was either invisible or inconvenient. The day I got my acceptance package, I went to my favorite spot in the local library, a fourth-floor window seat overlooking the park, and cried for an hour. Not sad tears. Those were tears of relief. When I told my parents at dinner that I was going to U of M, they were ecstatic. Michigan, but that's so far. What if Rachel needs you? Mom replied, I hope you're not expecting us to help with expenses. Rachel's cheerleading competitions are very costly. Rachel cried, oh my God, finally. Can I have your room? I need space for my TikTok videos. The summer before college, I worked double shifts at Carson's Diner to save money. Carol, bless her heart, always gave me extra tips and made sure I got to take home leftover pie at the end of my shifts. She also taught me a vital skill: how to recognize genuine people in a world full of fakes. Baby, she'd tell me, in diners and in life, the ones making the most noise usually have the least to say. Move-in day at U of Michigan. My folks couldn't make it because, surprise, Rachel had a cheerleading competition. Aunt Kelly drove me. Instead, helped me set up my dorm room and handed me a $500 envelope. Your Grandma Marie wanted you to have this, she told me. She's so proud of you. Later, I learned Grandma had been saving that money from her Social Security checks for months. That first night in my dorm room, I promised myself I was going to build such an incredible life that being overlooked would be unimaginable. Not for revenge, nothing to prove to my family, but for the 8-year-old girl who used to get sent to Grandma's house for sneezing. College flew by in a flurry of all-nighters, instant ramen, and heavenly independence. I graduated summa cum laude from the University of Michigan, not that my folks noticed. They were too busy helping Rachel transfer to her third college in 2 years. The breakthrough, but this is where the plot takes an unexpected turn. I got an entry-level job at Everett and Phillips Auction House in Detroit. I won't use the real name for obvious reasons, but if you're in the business, you probably know who I'm talking about. A genuine high-end establishment. Lots of old money. Clients, that kind of transaction. I started in their estate sales department, which involved cataloging the belongings of wealthy individuals after their deaths. Not exactly glamorous, but it paid the bills. My first few months were pretty standard, logging countless china sets, categorizing vintage furniture, and so on. Then came the Kingston estate. Mrs. Kingston was an elderly widow who had passed away with no children, leaving behind what everyone assumed was a huge collection of costume jewelry. Rooms full of the stuff. This is where those hours at Grandma Marie's came in handy. I'm sifting through this pile of jewelry when something catches my eye. It's an Art Deco brooch. Nothing flashy, but something about it felt different. The weight was wrong for costume jewelry, and the clasping mechanism was far too intricate for a replica. I think I spent my entire lunch break that day researching old jewelry hallmarks and signatures. I ended up staying late at the office to use the company's membership to several antique jewelry databases. The more I looked, the more certain I became that this wasn't costume jewelry. It was the real deal. Problem was, I was the new girl. Nobody would believe me if I claimed we had a potential treasure on our hands. So I did what the debate team taught me. I meticulously prepared my argument. I spent 2 weeks during lunch breaks and evenings learning everything I could about Art Deco jewelry authentication. I even used some of my pitiful savings to pay for an online gemology course. Finally, I mustered the courage to approach my boss, Mr. Harrison. I brought the whole presentation, comparative images, historical documentation, the works. The conversation went something like this. Me, sir, I think we might have something significant in the Kingston collection. Harrison, barely looking up from his phone. Sarah, we've already cataloged those as costume pieces. Me, I know. But look at these maker's marks. They match perfectly with Cartier's 1925 signatures. Harrison, finally paying attention. Where did you learn all of this? Me. I did some research. Long story short, the costume brooch sold for $47,000 at auction. Turns out it was part of a limited collection made for some European royalty in the 1920s. But here's the real kicker. Harrison started to trust me after that. He began giving me other items to authenticate. Suddenly, my pointless hobby of sorting antique jewels had real meaning. I threw myself into learning everything I could about vintage jewelry. I took every online course I could afford. I spent weekends at estate sales researching items. I even started a small notebook to document various authentication procedures. My apartment looked like a jewelry scholar's fever dream, with walls covered in printouts of vintage hallmarks and certification guidelines. The auction house started. Getting results? I was finding important pieces that others had overlooked, building contacts with collectors, and understanding the market. My commission checks got bigger. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving. I was actually saving money. My family, however, was still remarkably uninterested. At Sunday dinners, which I still went to like a fool, the conversation went like this. Mom, Sarah's still at that antique shop, right? Me. Auction house, actually. And yes, I just authenticated a rare Tiffany piece. Rachel, interrupting. Oh my god, speaking of jewelry, you guys have to see this charm bracelet I bought at the mall. But I didn't care anymore. For once in my life, I had found something entirely mine, something I was genuinely excellent at, something unrelated to being Rachel's sister. Building an empire, then came the Rothschild collection. This was about 2 years into my time at the auction house. A massive estate, old money family. There was a lot of buzz in the industry. I was part of the team cataloging their jewelry collection. And that's when I spotted it, a rather unassuming Art Nouveau piece that everyone else had missed. I spent 3 days researching it. I barely slept. It turned out to be a piece from a famous French jeweler's private collection, believed to have been lost during World War II, when it sold at auction for $238,000. Harrison called me into his office. I thought I was getting promoted. Instead, he said something that completely shifted everything. Sarah, you're wasting your talent here. You should be running your own authentication business. Initially, I shrugged it off. Me? Start a business? With what money? However, the idea took root. I started taking on small freelance authentication projects on the side. Word spread that I had a keen eye. Private collectors started reaching out directly. One night I was sitting in my tiny apartment, surrounded by jewelry manuals and authentication tools I'd slowly acquired, when I had an epiphany. This is something I could actually do. I could build something on my own. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I took out a huge loan against my car. I emptied my savings account. I rented a small office space in a less desirable part of town. People thought I was crazy. Maybe I was. I transformed a storage room above a Chinese restaurant, about the size of a college dorm room. The rent was low because it always smelled like Kung Pao chicken, and the Wi-Fi only worked if you sat in the corner by the window. But it was mine. The struggle and the secret the first few months were interesting, and by interesting I mean terrifying. I'd wake up at 4 a.m. with cold sweats, calculating how many months until my savings ran out. Loan payments felt like a noose around my neck. My office furniture consisted of a card table I bought from Goodwill and a chair I literally found on the curb. Don't worry, it was thoroughly cleaned. However, in the world of high-end jewelry, reputation and contacts are everything, and my experience at the auction house gave me both. I started small, doing authentication work for local antique dealers. My fees were lower than the bigger firms, but my attention to detail was becoming known. Word spread. 6 months later, a watershed moment occurred. A dealer I'd worked with at the auction house inquired about a collection of Victorian-era brooch. The owner needed confirmation before selling. It turned out to be a massive collection with pieces from 3 generations of families. I worked on it for 2 straight weeks, barely sleeping, documenting everything. I found 2 extremely rare pieces that had been misidentified as later replicas. The owner was so thrilled with my detailed analysis that she not only paid my fee, but also offered me a 10% commission when the pieces sold. That commission? $86,000, more money than I'd earned in the previous 2 years combined. Suddenly, my phone rang a lot. Private collectors heard about my knack for finding overlooked pieces. Estate lawyers sought my advice on inherited jewelry. Even my old auction house started sending me authentication work. I'm pretty sure Harrison was secretly helping spread the word. Thanks, boss. Scaling up and keeping the secret by year 2. I'd hired my first employee, Jenny, a fresh gemology graduate who reminded me a lot of myself at that age. She was brilliant but overlooked because she was quiet. She's now my head of authentication and is worth her weight in gold. The company grew faster than I could have imagined. We moved to a proper office downtown, goodbye Kung Pao chicken odor, and built a team of specialists. I'd earned a reputation for finding misplaced treasures. You wouldn't believe how many important historical jewelry items get misidentified as costume jewelry in people's attics. However, success came with its own set of obstacles. The bigger we got, the harder it became to keep it a secret from my family. They still thought I worked in an antique shop. Rachel would make these sarcastic remarks during family dinners. Rachel, Sarah, I have some old jewelry I was going to donate to Goodwill. Maybe your little shop would want it? Me, having just authenticated a $1.2 million Fabergé item that morning. Sure, I'll look into it. Mom would continue to introduce me to everyone. This is my other daughter. She works with old jewelry or something. Meanwhile, I was quoted in Forbes, luckily under my company name, and we had just opened our third office. What's strange about it is that keeping the secret became almost enjoyable, like this private joke with myself. I'd sit at Sunday dinner, in my Target discount outfit, actually Chanel, listening to Rachel talk about her entry-level marketing job, knowing I had just closed a deal for more than her annual income. I even started playing tiny games with myself, like wearing authentic Harry Winston pieces to family gatherings and seeing if anyone noticed. They never did. Rachel once spent 20 minutes showing off her expensive $200 Michael Kors watch. I was wearing a vintage Patek Philippe that cost more than her car. Managing growth and anonymous help, however, the real challenge was managing growth. By year 5, we'd established offices in Detroit, Chicago, and New York. I spent more time on airplanes than in my own bed. We built a reputation for discretion. It turns out that many wealthy people want their jewels verified without the rest of the world knowing. The money was enormous. We needed to hire a large team of financial advisors, for example. Nonetheless, I maintained a relatively modest lifestyle. I bought a nice but not flashy house in a good neighborhood. I drove a high-end, but not obvious, car. The only place I truly splurged was my home office. Advanced authentication equipment, the most effective security system money can buy, and a custom-built vault that would make Fort Knox envious. What's with the irony? They thought I was being frugal by helping them. Mom would remark things like, "It's so sweet of Sarah to help out. She must be eating nothing but ramen to manage it." Meanwhile, I had just validated a collection that earned me a commission greater than their mortgage. You know what's strange about success? The more you have, the harder it is to explain to others who have always seen you as inferior.
It's like
explaining color to someone who has only seen black and white. They lack the necessary context. But by this stage, my company was doing incredibly well. We had the Midwest's high-end jewelry authentication industry cornered, and our reputation was solid gold, pun intended. But every Sunday, I'd travel to my parents' house for dinner, playing Sarah, the modest antique shop worker. The cognitive dissonance was becoming ludicrous. I'd spend my mornings on conference calls with Dubai collectors, my afternoons authenticating million-dollar pieces, and my evenings at my parents' house in carefully chosen normal clothes, eating Mom's overcooked pot roast while Rachel dominated the conversation with stories about her latest marketing triumph, usually something like bringing her boss's coffee without spilling it. The defining moment one Sunday is particularly vivid in my mind. I had just closed a huge deal, authenticating a missing Cartier piece that had been sitting in someone's safe deposit box for 40 years. The commission alone? 7 figures. I drove directly from the meeting to my parents' place, still euphoric from the successful authentication. Mom, Sarah, honey, is everything okay? Your clothes are looking a bit worn. Me, oh, trying to save money. I was wearing a $3,000 cashmere sweater that I had purposefully chosen for its subtle appearance. Rachel, well, if you'd gotten a real job instead of playing with old jewelry. Dad, Rachel, be nice. Not everyone can be as successful as you. I almost choked on my pot roast trying not to laugh. The anonymous transfers monthly payments to my parents began around this time. Aunt Kelly told me they were struggling to pay Rachel's student loans and medical bills. Mom casually mentioned they might have to sell the house. I couldn't let that happen. Despite everything, it was still the home I grew up in. So I started an anonymous monthly transfer of $5,000 to their account. When asked, I said I was contributing $1,000 by living on rice and beans. They imagined the rest came from Aunt Kelly or another relative. Rachel, of course, took credit for inspiring family members to help. The money was helpful, but it also had unexpected consequences. My parents started treating me with a strange mix of pity and patronizing pride, as if I were some kind of noble poverty case, sacrificing everything to support the family. Meanwhile, Rachel's spending became more extravagant. She'd show up for dinner with new expensive bags, claiming they were outlet finds. They weren't. I can spot a genuine Gucci at 20 paces. She started taking extravagant vacations and bragging on Instagram about her blessed life. I'm pretty sure she used my support money for shopping sprees. However, I remained silent. The irony was simply delicious. The MBA drama, then came the college fund drama. Rachel announced she wanted to go back to school for her MBA, another private university, of course. Only the best for the golden child. Mom called me in tears, explaining how they couldn't afford it. I suggested maybe Rachel could look at state schools. They have good programs too. My mother, oh, honey, you don't understand. Your sister needs to maintain certain standards. Then, but speaking of helping, could you increase your monthly contribution for a few years? I increased it to $7,000 per month. My accounts were unaffected, but seeing them praise Rachel for taking initiative with her education, while assuming I was living on ramen to help out, that stung a little. The real kicker? I was giving a guest lecture at the very business school Rachel wanted to attend. My family didn't know that. The dean personally invited me to speak on luxury goods authentication and business growth. I had to come up with an excuse for why I couldn't attend Sunday dinner that week. My own accomplishments started to feel like a separate life, as if I were some corporate superhero with a hidden identity. By day, I was running a multi-million-dollar authentication business. By night, well, on Sunday evenings, I was just Sarah, the disappointing daughter who worked at an antique shop. The breaking point, Thanksgiving, the weight of the untruth was becoming heavier. Rachel made rude remarks about my career on multiple occasions. Each time, Mom apologized to her friends for my modest lifestyle. Every time Dad suggested I get a real job. I think I always knew it would end dramatically. I just didn't expect it to implode so spectacularly on Thanksgiving. It started 2 weeks before the holiday. Mom called weeping about her back pain. She'd been diagnosed with a herniated disc, and the idea of cooking Thanksgiving dinner for 20 guests overwhelmed her. Now, I'd love to tell you I offered to help purely out of goodwill, but honestly, I was just tired of pretending her dried out. Turkey was appetizing. Me, why don't I handle the food this year? I can have it catered, Mom. Oh, honey, we can't afford a caterer. Me, don't worry about the cost. I've been saving up. Mom, concerned, you're not taking out a loan, are you? I coordinated everything with a high-end catering firm that I use for business gatherings. They do incredible work, the kind of food that makes you wonder why you ever bothered to cook yourself. It cost more than my folks thought I earned in 2 months, but whatever. Thanksgiving morning dawned, and I was feeling pretty good. I had my laptop with me because I needed to monitor a major online auction in Hong Kong. This magnificent Art Nouveau necklace was for sale, and I had a client interested in authentication if they won the bid. Lunch arrived on schedule and everything was perfectly prepared. Rachel, of course, had to comment. Rachel, store-bought stuffing really, Sarah. Mom's is so much better. This is from the girl who once set off the smoke alarm making toast. Mom was apologizing to everyone for not cooking herself, but you could tell they were enjoying the meal. Rachel shut up after tasting the maple-glazed Brussels sprouts, which, by the way, cost more per plate than her weekly grocery budget. I excused myself from dinner and dessert to check my laptop. The auction was getting intense and I needed to be ready in case my client won. I set up in my old bedroom, which Mom had kept exactly the same since high school. Meanwhile, Rachel's room had undergone 3 renovations. That's when everything went wrong. I had left my authentication program running with multiple tabs open, displaying various accounts and current agreements. Rachel walked in without knocking. Some things never change. To borrow my phone charger. She saw my laptop screen and realized this was her chance to finally expose how pathetic her older sister was. Rachel, smirking, let's show everyone what Sarah's really been up to. Before I could stop her, she grabbed my laptop and marched into the dining room. The big reveal, picture this: 20 people, including aunts, uncles, cousins, and my parents. Stuffed with gourmet turkey and half drunk on pricey wine, which they thought was from Trader Joe's. Rachel, time to see what kind of important work Sarah's doing on Thanksgiving. She flipped the laptop around triumphantly, apparently intending to embarrass me with whatever minor antique transactions she assumed I was working on. The room went completely silent. You could hear the fancy clock I got Mom for Christmas ticking quietly. She thought it was a reproduction. My screen displayed current account balance, $12.4 million pending authentication contract, $485,000 recent transaction, $1.2 million. Hong Kong auction. Company's quarterly profit report, $4.2 million. Rachel's face cycled through 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. The final one landed somewhere between shock and nausea. She actually swayed slightly on her feet. Rachel, whispering, "This can't be right, Mom." "Rachel, honey, what is it?" Rachel, voice cracking, She's rich. Sarah's rich." Chaos ensues. If possible, the silence deepened even further. Then Mom started giggling, like really laughing. "Don't be silly. Sarah works at that little antique shop." I stood up, carefully straightening my basic cashmere sweater, which cost more than their monthly mortgage. Me. "Yes, actually, Mom, I own one of the largest jewelry authentication companies in the country. For years, all those antique shop comments. I authenticate pieces worth millions." "That little business you never asked about?" "It has offices in 3 cities." Dad choked on his drink. Aunt Kelly dropped her fork. Uncle started coughing terribly. Then Mom's laughter morphed into something else. Her face turned red, then purple. She stood up so fast her chair toppled over. "Mom," screaming, "you have millions and you let us struggle." "Me, struggle? I send you $7,000 every month." "Mom, while sitting on millions, your sister has student loans." So there it was, not congratulations, not wow, we're so proud. Just outraged that I hadn't given them more money. Rachel started to cry, surprising, I know, sobbing about how she deserved to know and how I had betrayed the family. Dad joined in. "My dad, how could you be so selfish? We're your parents, we raised you." That's when I lost it. Years of being disregarded, years of dismissal, years of being seen as a family disappointment. Everything poured out. Me. Raised me. You shipped me off to Grandma's every time I sneezed. You missed every achievement, every award, every milestone because Rachel might feel left out. You never saved a penny for my college but took out loans for her private school. And now you're mad that I built something for myself? The next 5 minutes were pure chaos. Mom screamed about family obligations. Dad yelled about ungrateful children. Rachel alternated between sobbing and demanding to know just how much money I had. Meanwhile, the fancy catering team tried to serve dessert while looking incredibly uncomfortable. I grabbed my laptop, picked up my Hermes bag, which Mom had previously complimented as a nice replica, and walked out. Behind me, I could hear Mom discussing how to spend my money, something about Rachel's MBA and a new car. As I drove home in my sensible car, a limited edition BMW, my phone started filling up with texts. The family group chat exploded. Rachel started posting on Facebook about hidden family wealth and selfish siblings. The aftermath, the days after Thanksgiving, were like watching a hurricane hit in slow motion, except the hurricane was my family and the debris was my sanity. Let's start with the text messages. Within 1 hour of leaving dinner, my phone had 47 missed calls and over 200 messages. Mom's texts followed this interesting progression. 7:42 p.m. How dare you walk out on family? 8:15 p.m. We need to talk. about this like adults. 9:03 p.m. Your sister deserves a share of your success. 10:30 p.m. I've already called a realtor about houses in better neighborhoods. 11:45 p.m. Why aren't you answering? This is your mother. Meanwhile, Rachel had become a full-fledged social media warrior. She wrote an enormous rant on Facebook about how her millionaire sister had been hoarding wealth while watching her beloved family struggle. The comment section was insane. Distant cousins and former high school classmates I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had strong opinions about my moral character. But this is the part that really got me. Rachel actually posted, all those years of me trying to help Sarah's career, giving her advice about moving up from that little antique shop, and she was secretly wealthy. The betrayal hurt so much. I nearly threw my phone across the room, the only career advice she ever gave me. She suggested I'd try selling jewelry on Etsy, flying monkeys and the final showdown if you're unfamiliar with the term. Flying monkeys are when toxic family members send others to guilt trip you. Aunt Susan, whom I saw maybe once every 3 years, called to inform me that family is everything. Uncle Bob, who I'm pretty sure still thinks I'm 12, emailed me a lengthy lecture on the importance of sharing wealth. Even my third cousins, wife's sister, how did she get my number? Felt compelled to share her thoughts on family obligation. But the real fun began when they showed up at my workplace. I arrived on Monday morning to find Mom, Dad, and Rachel sitting in our reception area. They informed Jenny, my receptionist, that they had an appointment for authentication services. Rachel clutched her Michael Kors bag as if it was genuinely worth something. The conversation went about as well as one would expect. Mom, we've discussed it as a family. Me, a family discussion without the family member you're discussing? Mom, ignoring me, and we think it's only fair that you set up trust funds for everyone. Rachel, I need at least $2 million to start my new life properly. Dad, and your mother and I would like to retire. We're thinking a beach house in Florida. Me, did you miss the part where I've been sending you $7,000 monthly? Rachel, that's nothing compared to what you have. You owe us. Me, I owe you for what exactly? The years of being ignored? The missed graduations? The constant comparisons? Mom, don't be dramatic, Sarah. We gave you everything. Me, no, I gave myself everything. And you know what? I'm done. Right there, in my own office lobby, I pulled out my phone and canceled the monthly transfers to their account. Mom gasped as if I'd slapped her. Rachel began her fake crying performance, but quickly stopped when she saw it wasn't working. Then things turned ugly. They refused to leave. I had to call security. Seeing my 60-year-old mother being dragged out while yelling about ungrateful children was surreal. Jenny asked if I wanted to press charges. I said no. However, I did have their names placed on the building's do not admit list. The harassment lasted for weeks. New phone numbers, fake email addresses, even attempts to contact me through my company's customer service. I finally had to issue a formal legal notice threatening harassment charges. Mom then played her final card. She called Grandma Marie, but here's the thing about Grandma Marie. She is wiser than all of them put together. How does she respond? Good for Sarah. About time someone in this family succeeded on their own terms. Mom didn't speak with her for 2 months after that. Moving on, it's been 6 months since Thanksgiving. I relocated to a new home with better security. I changed all my numbers. What about the company? We're doing better than ever. It turns out that my family drama attracted several high-profile clients who respected my discretion in the situation. Rachel continues to write passive-aggressive updates about toxic wealth and family betrayal. From what I hear, she's starting her own jewelry authentication business. Good luck with that. Mom and Dad finally stopped trying to contact me when my lawyer wrote them an official letter outlining how harassment charges would impact their lives. They're now telling everyone that they never wanted my money anyway, and that they're praying for my salvation. What's the best part? For the first time in my life, I feel liberated. No more Sunday dinners full of sly insults. No more downplaying my accomplishments to spare their feelings. No longer financing the Rachel show. My therapist believes I'm finally establishing healthy boundaries. I say I'm finally living authentically. So that's my story, Reddit. Thanks for letting me share it. Special thanks to the catering firm who sent me a Christmas letter stating that the Thanksgiving meal was the highlight of their year.